What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host. This episode of Pick Six is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. If you like winning picks, make sure you sign up at sportsline.com. Use promo code PICK to get your first month for $1. Speaking of Sportsline, too, Sportsline's finest, joining me for some post-free agency best bets. What we call it, maybe look at the odds, see if we can find any good value. RJ White and Alex Selesnick, a.k.a. PropStarz. What's up, fellas? How we doing?
Good. Not just a place for winning picks at Sportsline. Go download the app, sign up for alerts. I get an alert on every Alex pick. He just put in a few props just before the show that I was able to get on. So I have him alerted. I have Thomas Casale alerted, our new college basketball expert, just crushing it. This is the time of year you definitely want his picks as soon as lines come out because he will jump on things that move. So a lot of great value there over at Sportsline.
What's up, Brinson? Great to see you guys. I'm fired up. We were talking briefly before we went live. I think this has been one of the more exciting free agency periods that I can remember. I may be a little subject to some recency bias here, but some big moves. I'm excited to break them down, talk about some of the potential bets on the board as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rare when you get like a franchise quarterback. And I mean, we're not trying to put Kirk Cousins in the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, or even – I guess it's actually not pretty rare. It's happened like every year for the last 5 years. But I mean, like it's been a ton. There was a ton of movement, especially with skill position guys, and I think that tends to affect the odds more than anywhere else. Let's get into the Cousins stuff. He moved to the Atlanta Falcons, and as a result, I mean, like you look at this roster, they've got all the guys on offense. They got the quarterback if he's healthy and he's able to play. He's not too old. They got a defense that could be even better with Raheem Morris coming into town. How are you projecting this Falcons offense, PropStarz, when you look at, and do you see any value in Cousins specials, whether it's throws for X number of passing yards? We got all these from FanDuel. Is over under for passing yards 4,100 and a half, and then 28 and a half passing touchdowns.
I think the Kirk Cousins addition is going to have a significant impact on this Vikings offense. Went from arguably the worst quarterback play in the NFL over the past 2+ seasons to arguably a top 10 quarterback. We know it's been so frustrating watching Kyle Pitts and Drake London really not cash in on just this tremendous upside that both players possess, really as a result of the offense, as a result of Arthur Smith. Obviously, both are gone now, which I think just is a big plus for both of these guys. I also like the additional moves as well. Adding Darnell Mooney, I think, will take the lid off the defense. He offers some speed on the perimeter. Rondale Moore, more of a Swiss Army knife. You can utilize him in a variety of ways. We know Bijan Robinson in the backfield. So this Falcons offense, I expect to be extremely explosive. As far as value is concerned, that's a little bit of a different story. If we look at some of Cousins' season-long props that are available right now, the odds makers are also expecting the Falcons to be a very productive offense. I think Cousins will have a good shot to potentially lead the NFL in passing yards, especially if the Falcons' defense is middling and they could be pushed. I expect it to look similar to what we saw in the first half of the season for Minnesota. I just think there's that much talent on this Atlanta offense as well. I should preface by stating, if I'm playing season-long props, it's really hard for me to invest in an over as far as a season-long market is concerned. So nothing that really grabs my attention here. I would be looking to see if there's a discount on someone like Kyle Pitts, who obviously had the tremendous rookie season and then really followed it up with 2 subpar seasons. I think injuries played a role. Obviously, wasn't great quarterback play as well. But nothing that I'm rushing to get in right now, Brinson. But I will be waiting to see what Kyle Pitts' season-long receiving yards, possibly even Drake London as well.
So you mentioned lead the NFL in regular season passing yards. That was plus 1,600 at FanDuel. That's a special up there. Do you think there's value in that, or are you still not playing that one?
I think there's a bit of value in that. That'd be something I might put like a tenth of a unit on. I do think the odds are fairly appropriate, though. I think his odds last year with the Vikings were similar, around plus 1,500 to lead the NFL in passing yards. So I just don't see a lot of standalone value there. If I were to pick a bet, though, that would be where I'd look, RJ.
Yeah, so you look at the yardage. We said 4,100 and a half. 4,100 yards is 241.2 points per game over 17 games. He's beaten that average in 8 of 9 seasons as a starter. So if he plays 17 games, you got to expect he's going to get over that number. But returning from Achilles injuries is tricky. We don't see it typically from quarterbacks a ton. But for the running backs and receivers, they have not been very productive when they come back. Obviously, it's a different skill set, but you need to throw with your whole body too. So I'm not going to completely discount it. So if we assume he's back in week 1 and fully effective, I think that this is an over number. But I don't think we can assume that. We just kind of have to wait and see how he looks. He's 36 in August. Even if he was fully healthy, he likely only had 2 to maybe 3 or 4 years of effective play left in his career. Perfectly healthy. With injury, we don't know. So if I'm playing and I'm leaning to the under just due to the injury status and not knowing what's going to happen in week 1. But if he looks good in camp, I think this number rises and his prop is going to go up from here.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that in particular with Cousins, even if he looks good in camp, there's not a guarantee that they are going to come out of the gate saying, all right, we're going to throw the ball, 50 times per game. I still think that they're, this is a team think about Zach Robinson's coming from the Sean McVay, offense. I think it's very possible that they say, look, we got a good offensive line. We got these weapons. Let's try and run the ball with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. And, Kirk's going to throw, but we don't want him to come out, dropping back 50 times a game. I mean, that's not the winning formula if you're the Atlanta Falcons. I will say I have a lot of exposure. I did a bunch of the underdog best ball drafts where it's, you have they do the big board, which is before and you can draft before free agency and before the draft and during the free agency, which is really fun because you're sort of predicting where stuff might go. I got a lot of Justin Fields, maybe unfortunately at quarterback, but I got a ton of Bijan Robinson because I was thinking Fields to Atlanta, and so I was building out these Fields, Bijan. Kyle Pitts is my most rostered or the highest exposure tight end I have. I was just looking at it a second ago. And I mean, I think it's I think it is very exciting for this Falcons offense and what it can be if he's completely healthy. But I think that they might ease him in a little bit. The Falcons, Vegas is excited about the Falcons because they are the favorites to win the division at -110. The Bucks at 3-1. Saints +340. And then you have the Panthers all the way down at 10-1. RJ, when you look at this, in particular with the NFC South, I think the time to buy the Falcons was before the Cousins rumor started and before he actually went there. But I got to tell you, I mean, -110, I don't know. It's not that great a price. I think maybe the Buccaneers at 3-1 more interesting just because they've won it before and we know they have a healthy quarterback.
Yeah, it's too much of a swing for me to make Atlanta lay money here to win the division. New quarterback and coming off an injury, new coach. I still have some questions about the defense. I don't know that they're going to be a top, half of the league unit. And then, they added Cousins. They added some receiver depth. I would have liked to see them do more on defense. Tampa, I agree that they're a good value at 3-1. They brought Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans back. I don't know why they're supposed to be worse. They lost Dave Canales at OC. But their new OC is, I believe Liam Cohen is his name, was the Rams OC when Baker did enough to earn a chance to start in the league. Yeah, his statistics weren't great, but, he did enough to show that he could start. And he went to Tampa Bay and we know what happened from there. So I think Baker has already had a little bit of experience with them. I think that they're going to click pretty well based on that 2022 experience. I think Tampa is a clear value play here. I think Carolina at +1,000 doesn't deserve to be that long of odds just because the division should be a little more wide open. There's no reason why Atlanta should be the predominant favorite. We don't think they're going to run out and win 12, 13 games. Carolina was a train wreck last year, brought in a lot of new talent, new coach. Really focused on upgrading on defense and the offensive line, and brought in some receiver help too. So, I mean, they could get in the mix here. I don't think they're going to go from one win to winning the division, but we saw what Houston did as one of the worst teams last year. And Bryce Young, I don't think is a complete, zero. I think that he just was put in a bad position. So I'm okay with a little sprinkle there, but I think the best value is Tampa.
Yeah, I tend to agree on the Bucks. Anything, but let's talk about the win total here. Prop. We've got the Falcons and we can look at the regular season specials too. They've got a 15 to 1 Falcons to sweep the NFC South. I don't know if I like that. Also, Falcons to win 10 plus regular season games. We don't have win totals, of course, because it's still March. We'll get them probably in April or May once the schedule comes out. But the Falcons to win 10 plus regular season games -165, and then you look at their odds to is it to get to the NFC title game? 6-1 to get to the NFC title game, 13-1 to be the number one seed in the NFC. Anything along those lines interest you at all?
Those all seem fairly appropriate to me, Brinson. We can kind of project what their win total is going to be, considering 10 plus wins is minus 165. I'd imagine their win total will be 10.5 wins on the season. But yeah, I think these, again, like you had pointed out, Brinson, and RJ had mentioned too, the value was speculating with Atlanta's roster prior to the acquisition of Kirk Cousins. Now that he's there, I think, they're obviously the overwhelming favorite here. As far as other value plays, I agree. I think Carolina actually has had the best offseason besides the Atlanta Falcons of any team in the division. Love what they did, the interior of the offensive line. I really think that Bryce Young will be in a better situation to have more success next season. And I think the division's frankly more open. This isn't a strong division. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Carolina was competitive here and potentially, a couple things break right in their favor. Kirk Cousins gets off to a slow starter, isn't the same quarterback coming off the injury. I could see Carolina potentially winning this division. So, yeah, I think the value would be there. As far as Falcons stuff is concerned, yeah, I think all these numbers are very efficient.
Yeah, I'm not playing any of these Falcons numbers. You typically, when you're doing win totals, 50 cents is a half a win. So when you're doing the math, so at 10 plus at minus 165, I think the number's probably going to be right on 10. You would make it 10 minus 115 on the over. So that should be kind of where it settles in at that number. I mean, 10-7 seems okay, but let's say they sweep the division home games, go 3-1 against the Giants, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and the Chargers all at home, and then lose to the Chiefs and Dallas at home. You're looking at 6 wins there, so they need to get 5 more. You need or 4 more if you're going to win this minus 165 bet. So you need those 4 road wins. Let's say they go 1-2 in division. Get a win at Carolina, but I mean it could be 3-3, it could be 2-1, or 0-3, could be 2-1. Then you go at Denver, at Vegas. We don't know what the weather will be like in that Denver game, so we don't know the schedule. So let's say 1-1 there. They get a loss at Philly, probably. So they need to win both Kirk Cousins revenge games. It's going to be a big year for Will on this podcast, because Kirk Cousins plays Washington and plays Minnesota, both on the road this year. So if they win both of those, they get to 10. If they split them, I don't think they get there. So my lean, just of course, when we talked about Cousins' health, would be not to play the 10 games. If it was 10 minus 115, my lean's going to be to the under there. But yeah, I'm not really rushing out to play the Falcons right now.
Yeah, you absolutely do not take the heavily juiced win X number of games in March with a quarterback coming off an ACL tear and heading to a new city. That's just, or excuse me, an Achilles, not ACL tear. That's just not good value. All right, we've got other quarterbacks in new cities, and we've got adjusted odds as a result. We will tell you about those next.
Last dance. I shall follow your lead. We're on a search for one of the greatest powers ever known. Let's fly.
Kirk Cousins not the only quarterback in a new city. We also saw Russell Wilson and Justin Fields head to Pittsburgh. FanDuel's got some odds for Steelers Week 1 starting quarterback. And I mean, look, Russ is minus 1,100. Justin Fields 6-1. The Steelers have come out and said, RJ, that Russ is the starter in Week 1. You're not laying the juice minus 1,100 with Russell here. Any interest in Fields at 6-1 to be Week 1 starter? It's not. I guess it's not terrible odds.
Yeah, I think you could talk yourself into it. You have to think, barring injury, Russ is going to start. That's what they've said, but it'll be interesting to see how he gels with Tomlin once he gets in camp. We know that Russ has been a little bit of a locker room issue, at times, or things just haven't quite lined up with people. And Tomlin, is just a masterclass at getting the most out of his guys, and I don't think he's going to put up with that kind of thing. So maybe he falls in. Maybe if everything works out there. Pittsburgh is basically paying him nothing. It's all with Denver, so it doesn't cost them anything to move on. Fields is 10 years younger than Russ. Fields is the guy that could be their long-term franchise quarterback. Russell is like a couple of years left at best. So I don't think it's crazy to get in camp, see that Fields is playing as well, and Russ, if he's a little bit of a headache, just to change your minds and say that he's not a fit in the locker room, we're going to go with Fields. So at 6, I'm not rushing to play 6-1 in March, but I don't think this is crazy. I'd like to see it go up a little bit, maybe like to get 10-1, if the odds are just going to steam toward Russ a little bit because of what the news comes out. And then before we get to camp, play something like 10-1 or 12-1.
Prop, we got some Russell Wilson season specials. Again, like, he's heavily favored to start. So you get these, you don't have these for Justin Fields. And the way that FanDuel, wisely has set these up, and all these books are going to do this in March. And that's, you get a Kirk Cousins over under, you're not going to get an over under for Russell Wilson in passing yards because Justin Fields is lingering. And if you gave me anything above 3,500, I would smash the under on Russell Wilson right now, because I think that if the Steelers struggle, they'll yank Russ out. There's a chance they cut Russ before the season starts. So with all that in mind, any interest in taking the overs here on the props? 3,500 regular season passing yards is plus 160, 4,000, 5-1, 4,500, ridiculous, 19-1, and then we got touchdown passes, and then 55-1 to lead the regular season, lead the NFL in passing yards, and 31-1 to lead the NFL in passing touchdowns. Any interest in speculating there?
Very little interest here, Brinson. Even before there was a younger, more talented quarterback waiting in the wings, just Russell Wilson on one of the more traditionally hyper-conservative offenses in the NFL, led by now Arthur Smith, was extremely underwhelming to me. Then you add the fact that there's, again, a more talented quarterback playing behind him, who I think has a great chance to take over as a starter if Russ stumbles out of the gate, or, inevitably struggles on an offense that's going to be very likely run first. Doesn't have a tremendous amount of receiving talent outside of George Pickens right now either. So, yeah, these are not this is, even if this was a good situation with a good quarterback, these aren't props that I'm rushing out to play, just because, again, if I'm playing season-long stuff, I have to have a tremendous edge when we're talking about overs and categories like this. So, yeah, I think it's only a matter of time until Justin Fields takes over at quarterback there. I think when Russ is the starter, it's going to be, again, a very conservative run-first offense. So I don't see a lot of value in Russell Wilson specials or props at this stage of the season in particular.
With Arthur Smith in tow, make sure you're playing your overs on backup tight end production. That's where you're going to make your money.
Jonnu Smith touchdowns.
Yeah.
It is the backup to Pat Fryermuth now, because Jonnu obviously went to Miami.
Darnell Washington,
Georgia,
massive presence there.
Yeah, actually, I really like Washington. He's a big boy. Speaking of big boys, King Henry's a big boy, and he changed uniforms moving from Tennessee to Baltimore. Over under on his rushing yards is actually up, and his rushing touchdowns as well at FanDuel. We have a total here of 975.5 rushing yards and 10.5 rushing touchdowns. I think, RJ, I know that you would say at this time of the year, when you have some unknowns on the offensive line and you have an older running back, you kind of have to take the under if you're going to take anything. But, man, Derrick Henry just to get to 1,000 yards in an offense of Lamar Jackson is kind of intriguing.
Yeah, he finished the season healthy, right? So there's no reason to worry about his health. And Baltimore gave 364 carries to running backs last year, 163 carries to quarterbacks, most of them obviously Lamar. I wonder if that split changes at all now that they have, if Henry doesn't get hurt in camp like all their running backs always do, they have a legitimate number one running back.
Yeah, that is weird.
And I know they'll want to mix Keaton Mitchell in once he's healthy, and also probably save Derrick Henry a bit for the playoffs, knowing that they're trying to win a Super Bowl, not just, win regular season games. But I think he gets to at least 250 carries, in this offense. And he should definitely be above 4 yards per carry based on what he's done in his career and based on the threat that Lamar Jackson poses to teams having to play him outside. So if he's getting 250 carries and he's getting over this total. So I would not play the under here. If anything, I'm playing the over. I think it's going to be higher in August. Not rushing to bet it now in March, but want to see what happens a little bit. But I would play this over, and 10.5 seems like a high touchdown number, but the running backs had 20 rushing touchdowns last year, even with Lamar there playing, so I'm not worried about Lamar sniping there. I think there's also a special to get the 12 plus touchdowns is plus 185. I think if you're going to play the high end to go over 10 anyway, 10.5, might as well play that 12 and see if he's playing well. I think he's going to get to 14 to 16 touchdowns. So like getting value there on that plus 185 to 12 plus touchdowns, and really like his over because I think he's going to get to 1,000 yards in this offense.
Prop, you pumped for the Derrick Henry. I mean, it's like my favorite offseason addition. I don't like people are like, he's old, he's a running back. Who cares? It's like, shut up. What are you, a bunch of Priscos? Like, this is an awesome addition. Like, Derrick Henry in Baltimore makes everything fun.
I couldn't agree more. I love this fit both for Henry and the Ravens offense. I will preface by stating that exclusively when it comes to running back season-long props, it takes, again, a tremendous edge for me to play an over, particularly in these categories, just due to the nature of the position, how, many injuries there are, etc. But again, I think this is a tremendous fit for Derrick Henry, for the Ravens offense, just by a byproduct of playing alongside of Lamar Jackson. I could see Henry having a career high or close to a career high in yards per carry. I think he's going to be ultra efficient when he's on the field. I also think he still looked like he had plenty of juice left last year. I think a lot of the issues that they were having were more to do with the offense, with the offensive line. Now going to Baltimore, really, I think it'll do wonders for him. I also think they'll utilize him in a way where they'll keep him fresh for the majority of the season. I don't see Henry getting these massive workloads that he was getting in Tennessee, where he was getting worn down by the end of the season. I think Baltimore will really, keep him capped at 12 to 15 carries per game, especially early in the year. So I think he could have a tremendous season. I think he'll be highly efficient. I'm not playing overs on running back props in March, but again, I would definitely lean over on the yards and the touchdowns as well. I could see him having a very efficient season.
Yeah, you mentioned a key point in there. People are talking about the Ravens losing offensive linemen. I mean, did you see the offensive line he played with in Tennessee? It was the worst line in the league basically last year. And he got 280 carries. He got to 1,100 something rush yards, 4.2 yards per carry, which is on the low end for him. I think it's his lowest number since either his rookie year or the year after that.
I think people are treating it like it's like, oh, this is Derrick Henry falling off. It's like, no, Derrick Henry had like Malik Willis and Will Levis at quarterback and a terrible offensive line and like nobody to threaten vertically. Like they didn't put him out there at the time because they were trailing. They needed Tajay Spears out there.
Right. So I think the situation improves. Even if Baltimore is losing offensive linemen, he's still in a better position than he was last year.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and I'm not pushing back on you, but I sort of like, I look at the Baltimore setup and, it's like, yes, they did lose offensive linemen, but they made sure that Ronnie Stanley was coming back. So they got their 2016 first round pick. Then you got Voorhees at guard. That's the 7th round pick. But, Tyler Linderbaum with 2022 first round pick. And then Ben Cleveland, 2021 3rd round pick. And you've got Daniel Falalali, 4th round pick from 2022, and Patrick McCarry. Like, they've got in-house guys. And Baltimore's done a very good job of drafting and developing for years and years. It's reasonable to believe they think these guys can step up and the offense can make up for the losses on defense. I think it's particularly shocking when you look at the Derrick Henry number. And I'm with you again. It's March. You're not going to play the running back. But you see Saquon Barkley's number. The Eagles added Saquon Barkley in his rushing total over at FanDuel, 1,025.5 rushing yards, along with a 6.5 rushing touchdown over under prop. You don't want to play for somebody to get hurt, but Saquon Barkley hadn't been healthy for like half of his career. It's not unreasonable to suggest that he might get dinged up. If the Eagles aren't as good, he's catching more, he's more of a receiving back. I mean, I can see him falling short of 1,000 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously durability issues have plagued Saquon outside of his rookie season. Since he's been in the league, he's lost games due to nagging injuries or more serious injuries. I do like the fit, though, obviously, on a Philadelphia Eagles team similar to Baltimore that runs the football very well. Also, as a product of having Jalen Hurts at quarterback, it just creates a lot more space and opportunities and open running lanes for Saquon, really to take advantage of that breakaway speed. Really saw DeAndre Swift get off to a great start last year, but just wore down as the season progressed. DeAndre Swift had never handled that sort of workload and stayed healthy for the season. We have at least seen Saquon Barkley handle significant workloads. So I just think, his running style is a really great fit for this Philadelphia offense. Saquon, even when he's struggled, he's always a threat. His breakaway yards are always amongst the top, running backs in the NFL. If we look at a lot of those advanced metrics, his yards after contact etc. So, yeah, I think a healthy Saquon Barkley will be a very dynamic piece for this Philadelphia offense. Obviously, fair to wonder if he's going to get in 16 or 17 games here. But when he's on the field, I really believe that Saquon Barkley will be highly, highly productive. If he does get in 16, go ahead, Brinson.
No, I was gonna say, like, RJ, do you think do you think we see with Jason Kelce retiring less of a tush push situation now, and like trying to keep Jalen Hurts healthy, and if not, like, I mean, does that affect your thoughts on that 6.5? Also, we see these specials here that lead the NFL in regular season touchdowns 40-1. Good Lord. To score 4+ touchdowns against the Giants 20-1. That's kind of fun. You can just bet on spite. I mean, I might have to dip my pinky toe in a little revenge 20-1 bet. I don't know. That's kind of right up my alley.
3+ touchdowns against the Giants is 6.5 to 1, and he could get that in one game. So even if it doesn't go through the season healthy, he'll be motivated to get that in one game, I think. So that I play more than the 4. But yeah, the question is he healthy? I mean, Alex mentioned the yards per contact, yards after contact number. What your yards after contact is when you're sitting on the sidelines because you're hurt. It's 0. So it's just a thing of he had a monster rookie season, one of the best rookie seasons ever. And then he's gotten to this 1,025 number once in the next 5 years, just because he's never on the field as much as he should be. It was 962 yards last year. So he's coming into a situation where you need him to stay healthy. We don't know if he can. The yardage wise, I don't know why he's higher than Henry. I think Henry's a much safer bet to get to 1,000 yards than Saquon. And then the touchdown wise, you talk about the tush push. I mean, I would hope that they trained Cam Jurgens to figure it out. It's such an advantage for them to do, and they're so good at executing it. You can't just, okay, we lost Kelce, we're just not going to do that anymore. I think you have to figure out a way to continue to press that advantage.
I still think the Eagles' offensive line will be very successful. Obviously, losing Kelce, big locker room presence on the field still was a very good center. But the Eagles definitely have invested a lot of resources in the offensive line. RJ mentioned Cam Jurgens. I think the Eagles' offensive line will still be playing at a very high level, even without Kelce. I still expect to see the tush push be a big focal point of the offense with Nick Sirianni at the helm. And I do think the Eagles will run the football quite a bit more this season than they even did last year as well.
Yeah, so they had 22 rushing touchdowns last year. Hurts had 15 of them. And so if that's the same proportion, you need Barkley to play 17 games to hit this over on this number. And so that's what you're banking on. So if anything, I'm playing unders on both his numbers if I'm going to play him right now. Yeah,
same. Let's not forget DeAndre Swift. He had 300 rushing yards in 2 of his first 3 games and really fizzled out after that. I mean, the workload just didn't work. And so I do wonder if they'll just be, just how aggressive they'll be with Saquon early on. But I do like the touchdowns against the Giants. All right. Calvin Ridley got real paid by the Tennessee Titans. And we're going to try and get paid with some Calvin Ridley props, 875.5 receiving yards over at DraftKings, along with a receiving touchdowns prop of 5.5. And then a bunch of specials at FanDuel. 6+ receiving touchdowns is actually minus 175. So you would want to take that if you obviously you would prefer to take the over.
The over-under is at over-under's at a different site. So, I mean, the sites are going to have different numbers at this point. So shop around if you want to go play his over because you can find something better than this minus 175.
Yeah, absolutely. But any interest in those, RJ, in terms of, or any of these specials when it comes to Calvin Ridley, with a questionable quarterback situation at best?
Yeah, I think Tennessee's an interesting team because DeAndre Hopkins really clicked with Levis right when he started. I think he had 3 touchdowns that first Levis game. Going to be 32, but he's still going to be a presence, I think, especially in the red zone. Going to have a prominent role here. But new coach is Brian Callahan, and 2 of the last 3 years in his offense at Cincinnati has supported 1,000-yard receivers, 2 different 1,000-yard receivers. Of course, Ridley probably isn't Jamar Chase level, but those are still 2 good receivers, and his system can if the quarterback is playing well, it can support that. So kind of all comes down to what we're going to get out of Will Levis. Tennessee is likely going to be playing from behind a lot of these games. They have no Derrick Henry either to lean on. Even when they're behind, they would lean on him a lot anyway. So they're going to have to throw more. So I think Ridley is going to get over this number. He had at least 7 receiving touchdowns in all seasons where he played more than 5 games. So I think he'll get there too. So I'd be looking to play Ridley's overs. I think there's going to be some excitement that builds up for him as we get closer to the season, and no injury concerns with him. So I'm okay. I'm not going to lock up my money this early, but I'm okay playing an over now if you want to.
I have a bit of a different outlook on Ridley. I do feel that as far as his real life presence will be an upgrade for Tennessee's offense, but Ridley struggled to eclipse these numbers in Jacksonville, which I would argue would be a higher volume passing offense, sort of operating as the 1A or at worst the 1B to Christian Kirk in an offense that threw the football quite a bit. He didn't eclipse 1,000 yards, if I'm not mistaken, and just was around this touchdown total. Now going to Tennessee, where I think there is a downgrade at quarterback. DeAndre Hopkins has been a target monster, and at least the iteration of Tennessee that we saw last year, I recognize different coaching staff now, wasn't airing the football out as much as the Jacksonville offense was. So I do think he'll make a big impact as far as taking pressure off of DeAndre Hopkins. The offense will be more efficient running the football as well. He does command a lot of attention still. But yeah, I just think the numbers themselves may not necessarily reflect that. So I'd actually be looking at Ridley's unders here.
Yeah, actually did get to 1,000 yards last year, 1,016, just barely, and 8 touchdowns, and more competition, I think, in Jacksonville. They had more people to throw to. So it kind of really depends on, it sounds like from what you're thinking, you think he's going to complement Hopkins. So it really comes down to, is he going to be the 2 there? Is he going to be the 1? And if they sign him to come in and take Hopkins' spot as the 1 and relegate him more to a number 2 role at this point in his career, I think you got to like the Ridley overs. If you think the other way, he's going to play a complementary role, what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and there was like at least some buzz or some thought that like they wanted to bring Ridley in and then subsequently like move on from DeAndre Hopkins if DeAndre Hopkins wasn't willing to like play ball or like wasn't willing to take less on his contract, et cetera, et cetera. So just something to think about. Obviously, if Hopkins was cut loose, this number for Ridley would likely pop up because he would be getting all of the targets in whatever the hell this Tennessee offense is going to look like. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll look at some team futures and give out our favorite futures. But first, there's still time to get your women's March Madness brackets in before it locks. You can play in a pool with friends and enter our bracket challenge for a chance to win a trip to the 2025 Women's Final Four. Play now on the CBS Sports app or visit cbssports.com/win to fill out your brackets now. No purchase necessary. See terms and rules for details.
For the last 4 years, I've been a prisoner of this hotel. G-sharp, I believe.
Why are they keeping you here? Why do they let you live?
Most of my friends are dead. My house was seized and burned.
You must never leave. If you do, I'll be waiting.
They can take away everything. But they can't take away who you are.
All right, the New York Jets just will not go at offseason without getting all of the attention. They're actually only the 3rd favorite this time around to win the AFC East, but did have a very nice little ad session here. Obviously, Rodgers is coming back. Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, and then added wide receiver Mike Williams to the mix as well. On FanDuel, you can see these odds for the AFC East. Last year I said the Bills were my favorite bet. Got lucky to steal that. I mean, the Dolphins should have won that division running away, but here we are. Any interest, RJ, in any of these teams in the AFC East? I assume the Patriots 17-1 is kind of an absurd number, but I mean.
Yeah, I don't really love anyone, but if the market, has been high on Kirk Cousins off an Achilles tear, I don't see why the Giants aren't higher either, considering how much excitement there was for Aaron Rodgers in New York last year. And if we think that Kirk Cousins is going to be fine suffering his injury a couple months after Rodgers did, then why isn't Rodgers going to be fine? So like the upgrades on both tackle spots, definitely needed that. Love the upgrade on backup quarterback, Tyrod Taylor as the backup quarterback now. It puts you in a much better spot if Rodgers gets hurt again, or he just, re-injures, or he's not the same. Adam Mike Williams still have a strong defense. They didn't play up to snuff, I think, last year, but you watch Zach Wilson out there, for playing on the other side of the ball, and I think you kind of give up half the time, and you're just like, whatever we do isn't going to matter that much. So even though I'm pessimistic personally on Rodgers returning from a major injury at 40, I think the team around him is much stronger, and I think that they have a good backup plan in Taylor. So if I'm going to play anything, I think the value there is on the Jets at plus 260, but probably a stay away on these for me.
I'm in lockstep.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with RJ here. Nothing that I'm running to play right now. If I had to choose something if I had to bet something, it would be the Jets. I do love what they've done in the offseason. Obviously, it's a big if Rodgers can get back to, an MVP level or even a high-end starter level coming off the injury at his age. But if they can get good quarterback play from him, I really think the team will be very successful. Love all the additions that they've made on offense. And just an addition by subtraction. He'll help the defense out quite a bit by just not having them be on the field as much as they were last year. So, I think the Jets could be very good if Aaron Rodgers is close to full health.
In the AFC North, obviously, we talked about the Ravens adding Derrick Henry. The Bengals kept T. Higgins around, and then the Browns getting no love, despite grabbing Jerry Jeudy and signing him to a big contract and, being a threat to win the division with Joe Flacco last year. 5.5 to 1. Pretty substantial there, RJ. Steelers 9.5 to 1 to win this division, which I don't know, man. Mike Tomlin, if Russell Wilson bounces back at all, a little interest there maybe for me.
Yeah, Cleveland's a little interesting if you have any faith in Deshaun Watson. I'm not sure that I do. I think if Jameis Winston was their starter, I might like them at 550. But I just don't know what I'm going to get from Deshaun at this point, based on what we've seen. I know people will point to his record in those games. He just didn't play very well. He played well, I think, in one game out of the times he was starting. I was not impressed with him. Pittsburgh has been able to win with bad quarterbacks. I mean, they went like 10 wins last year with that trio of quarterbacks. What if Wilson's a big upgrade? And if not, what if Justin Fields is a big upgrade when he takes over? I think that's a good value at plus 950, but it's hard not to back Baltimore at plus odds. If you're going to make Atlanta minus 110, I don't know why you wouldn't make Baltimore at least minus 110. Even though these teams are stronger on paper, Baltimore just looks so good to me. That top 5 offensive defense now added Derrick Henry. They kept Madubuike around. That I like them to win even in the strong division. I think they should be about higher than 50%. So if I'm playing this, I'm playing Baltimore plus 110 right now. We'll see what those odds look like as we get closer to the season.
I would probably lean towards, I think the Ravens are probably being treated sort of similar to the Chiefs 2 years ago and the Bills last year, in that it's like the offseason didn't go the way that everybody thought it should. You lose Patrick Queen, you lose Geno Stone, you add Henry, but it's a running back, and the offensive line is going away. And people just don't like to bet the Ravens. They don't like the Ravens for whatever reason. I love the Ravens because they're usually undervalued, and them at plus money to win the division feels like a pretty good bet, Alex.
I would agree, Brinson. Yeah, no team, in my opinion, also is better equipped to replace guys you mentioned that had left, like a Geno Stone. Then the Ravens just do such an excellent job developing in-house talent. There's always just so much depth on the roster. I think top to bottom, they really have had one of the best rosters in the NFL for as far back as I can remember. So I expect the Ravens to continue to be ultra-talented roster. We know how well they draft and develop these guys, even later round draft picks. And again, the acquisition of Derrick Henry, if he's healthy, I really think will be huge for this Baltimore's offense, who really just had their entire running back depth chart completely depleted by basically week 3 last year. So if they can stay healthy at some of these key positions, I expect Baltimore to win what is, again, a very tough murderer's row division. But I think they're the most talented team by a sizable advantage.
In the South, the Texans are the favorite at plus 150, Jags plus 250, Colts plus 280, and the Titans a whopping 6-1. It's interesting that Tennessee has got. I don't know, a little bit. Do you think there's any chance, RJ, that the Texans could do what the Jaguars did last year, which is win the division kind of surprisingly late in the season, and then sort of fall back to earth a bit, or do you think that they're too well coached and CJ Stroud's just too good?
Yeah, there's definitely a chance. I think Stroud has proven himself more than Trevor did coming out, or Trevor has even to this point at all. So I think they could run it back. Interesting adds on the defensive side, including Daniil Hunter. Going to be a tougher schedule, playing a first-place schedule. So we'll see if that matters. I don't think Jacksonville's the team to come up and challenge them. Not sure about Indy. I think they're interesting. They didn't do much aside from adding Flacco, who's a weird fit. If you can be your backup behind Anthony Richardson, you can get 2 more different guys. So offense, I think, has to change pretty drastically if he has to play. But I still think they're probably the best value here. Tennessee at 6-1. I want to love them a long shot odds in a wide open division. It still feels like they're a work in progress. They're going to need at least 1 more year, I think, to add pieces and to get better because they were a long way away at the end of last year.
I would tend to agree here. I think the Colts are potentially the X factor, mainly because of the quarterback, mainly because of Anthony Richardson. When he's on the field, obviously, it was very promising. I do think he could, if he were to stay healthy, which is a big if considering his playing style we saw last year, the Colts could definitely be a sleeper in the division. But yeah, the Titans, I agree. They're a ways away, although I do like some of the additions offensively. If Will Levis is able to take a significant step forward, which is obviously a big if.
It's not that crazy. Like Brian Callahan might be a really good coach, and he's got Bill Callahan there that might make the offensive line a lot better. They can improve in the draft. I mean, Pollard, I don't know. I think you can squint and see a pathway for the Titans offense to be decent.
I would agree. Yeah, I think they present the best value in the division.
And then you got to worry about the defensive side.
Yeah, exactly. Any interest in anyone other than the Chiefs? And you can't look. The books finally wisened up. They made it minus 250. It doesn't matter. That ain't Hollywood Brown, right? I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. The last 2 years have been a free gravy train with the Chiefs under minus 200 to win the division. They won it handily both years, plus 160 2 years ago, just a ridiculous number. Jim Harbaugh scares me a little, but the Chargers lost a bunch of pieces. Any interest from you guys, anybody other than the Chiefs winning this division? I think it's pretty stupid to fail.
Yeah, I think the Chargers roster needs a lot of work before they're going to be competitive, and the other teams don't have quarterbacks. So I don't know who's going to come up and challenge Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
I would agree completely. The only thing that interests me is I'm a bit surprised that the Chargers are above the Raiders. To me, the Raiders have the better roster. Obviously, I know the Chargers have the better quarterback, but top to bottom, I have been impressed with the Raiders acquisitions. Love the Christian Wilkins signing. I like what I saw out of the Raiders defense down the stretch last year. I would frankly put them above the Chargers.
If you put Justin Fields on that team, I think that they'd both be plus 500, Chargers and Raiders. I think people would treat them equally.
All right. The NFC side of things, we'll start in the NFC East, where at FanDuel, the Cowboys are the favorite to win the division in back-to-back years. Oh, no, excuse me. Yeah, they did win the division last year. Yeah. Favorite to repeat as division champions. Hard to believe that the Eagles lost that division. I mean, what a collapse. Dallas didn't do much in free agency, but the Eagles lost Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey. I mean, that matters as much as the ads are there, and Cam Jurgens is probably a pretty good replacement there. Giants 9-1, Commanders 10-1. I think if you were would the Giants drafting a rookie quarterback change your interest in the Giants at all, RJ?
No, I mean, I'm a huge fan of their coach. So whether I'm going to like them or not is kind of independent on what they do at quarterback. But I don't like Dallas here. I mean, they lost Dan Quinn. That's a massive loss on the defensive side, considering how well he's played. And Mike Zimmer takes over there. Yeah, his defense at the end of his Minnesota tenure were not great. He's the reason why Kirk Cousins couldn't advance past the divisional round, because those defenses couldn't catch up with how well the offense was playing when they were playing well. Then you go to the players. They lost Tyron Smith, Tony Pollard, Leighton Vander Esch. They didn't add much. I can't back them here. I think Philly is really interesting despite their personnel losses because they now have a proven offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore and a proven defensive coordinator in Vic Fangio. And Alex used the term addition by subtraction, earlier. You don't get any more addition by subtraction than not having Matt Patricia there, because once he got more involved in that defense, they completely fell apart toward the end of the year. And having Vic Fangio in is going to fix things there. So I like Philly. I think plus 135 is a great number here. I don't rule out Washington making a run with their rookie quarterback either. They're going to have the better quarterback than the Giants, you figure, at number 2. They've done some good things this offseason. Dan Quinn is a great coach. He will have the defense in a much better place than they were to end last year. And he's going to get the most out of his guys there. So if anybody's going to make a run, I would take the Washington team over the Giants at this point at plus 1,000.
I'm in agreement once again with RJ here. Although I will say the NFC has been very fascinating. I do like what the Commanders have done in the offseason. Obviously, been very aggressive throughout free agency. The Giants, I think, have done fairly well as well. The Eagles, I actually love what they've done. Signing Landon Dickerson to the big deal, adding Bryce Huff, very underrated defensive player. Piece that they'll be able to move all around the scheme. C.J. Gardner-Johnson returning to the Eagles. Devin Bush, the ultra-athletic linebacker, former top 10 pick from Tampa Bay. Obviously, Saquon as well. Fletcher Cox was really just a rotational piece last year. Obviously, Kelsey is a big miss, but again, I think the Eagles have a lot of depth at the offensive line. So I think the Eagles have gotten better, significantly better in this offseason. I think they should be the favorites, especially looking at the Cowboys really doing nothing. Especially looking at their running back depth chart right now. Things are pretty barren in Dallas. So, I think the Eagles should be favored in the NFC East, and I do like what the Commanders have done. So I think they are present a little bit of value there at plus 1,000.
And you talk about losing Fletcher Cox.
North.
You're talking about losing Fletcher Cox, right? I mean, they spent years preparing for this. They drafted Jordan Davis. They drafted Jalen Carter. So, I mean, that they were ready for this moment. They have the talent to get over the Fletcher Cox loss. As great as the Eagle as he was in his tenure, they've been ready for this.
Agreed.
No, that's a good point. I mean, like, credit to Howie Roseman. He gets a lot of platitudes, during draft season, free agency season, but for like good reason. He's got him in a great cap space. And you lose to, definitely Jason Kelsey's a Hall of Famer. I don't know if Fletcher Cox is, but friend of the pod, interviewed Fletcher Cox in the Super Bowl, actually. Big hunter. I don't know if everybody know that? I didn't know he was a huge hunter.
Eagles Ring of Honor for Fletcher Cox, not a Hall of Famer. I will say, I believe you have to go back 20-plus years to the last time that a team has repeated winning the NFC East. Yeah,
it just doesn't happen very often. I would agree. I think I agree with you guys on the Eagles and then the Cowboys. The Commanders. In the North, kind of a similar setup. Packers, with the way Jordan Love played down the stretch, though, get over 2-1 here. But, I mean, I got to tell you, I think the Lions – I don't think the Lions are fluky. I think the Lions, what they did is real, and they're only getting better, frankly, across the board. They brought back all their coordinators. They improved by you improve the back end of the defense and in terms of the run stuffing. And, I don't know. They could just be a really good team. But at the same time, the Packers are kind of interesting with Jordan Love here.
Yeah, you mentioned the Chiefs a couple of years ago when the odds, got a little, weird out of focus because people really like the teams below them. And I think that's kind of what's happening here, even though the Lions aren't as established and those odds aren't as big. It's kind of like there's reasons to love the Packers. They have a franchise quarterback now. I expect better from their defense with Halfley as the defense coordinator now. And I think they can give Detroit a run and be competitive there. Chicago is obviously going to be the trendy pick. Bring Caleb Williams in with the talent they've added. Keenan Allen at receiver. Defense was awesome in the second half. A lot of people are going to be on them. I think that once their odds come down as people bet them and the Lions and Packers odds come up, I'm going to be more interested in betting those two teams. We'll see how high the Packers get at plus 250. I might be looking to play them. And then Lions, there's no reason to expect them to fall off, even though I am drawn to those next two teams. So plus 130 already feels like a solid value, but I bet we get even better as we get toward July and August and people talk themselves into the Bears. So I think this is a wait and see division, and then you play either Detroit or Green Bay or both if you get great odds. But I think that's the way I'm going to go.
Yeah, I've been such a fan of what the Vikings have done in free agency. I think they've been the biggest winners of free agency, or frankly up there. Love Jonathan Grenard, the player from the Texans, as well. Aaron Jones, the running back, Andrew Van Ginkel. Today they added some great depth signings in Jihad Ward, Geiger Hill, the linebacker from Brinson's Panthers. I just love everything the Vikings have been doing. I think
you love better. The Kirk Cousins Sam Darnold swap.
A big if they can somehow get adequate or average quarterback play, to me will obviously dictate whether or not they can compete for the division. I'd like to think they have a plan heading into the draft, considering the swap with the Texans and how aggressive they've been. And I just love all the, corresponding moves. So I do believe that we will see the Vikings come out with potential franchise signal caller from the draft. Obviously, if it is Sam Darnold, I don't like the present value there. I'm not rushing to do this, but if I'm going to speculate, I think there's a lot of value there. I think this defense is going to be legitimate top 10 defense. And offensively, we saw how explosive they were with a solid quarterback play. So I think the Vikings present great value.
Yeah, the question is, you talk about liking the swap. You like the swap from Kirk Cousins to Drake May, because I wrote an article for CBS yesterday, looking at my draft pick trade chart, which is based on the value of pick trades as they happen throughout the years, the last 8 years or so, and it's a little bit of an overpay to give up 11 and 23 to get to 5. So that should be something that the Chargers would think about with the amount of talent they need. I think that could get it done, and you don't execute that trade unless you think you can get a little bit higher. So I think you call up New England, you say, would you go from 3 to 5 if we give you our future first? And then you're spending the 3 first-round picks essentially to get from 11 to 3. So I think there's a pathway for them to do that, to get to 3 and to get Drake May.
Spicy.
I would agree.
That would certainly swap things up. We mentioned the Falcons at -110. Actually, we already talked about the NFC South with the Falcons, so we can skip right over there. And I'll ask you the same question I asked you about the Chiefs. Any interest in fading the 49ers here before the Aaron Donald retirement? I would have been on the Rams. But, man, it is a big loss on the defensive side of the ball, and the 49ers just remain stacked. I know you guys were on the Seahawks last year, new coaching staff. Maybe you have interest in them. It's hard to fade the 49ers, though. They're kind of a truck.
Yeah. I don't think this is really comparable to the AFC West just because of the makeup of the other teams. I mean, the Rams did lose Aaron Donald, but they still have Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams. They're going to be able to win some shootouts if they have to. So even if the defense struggles, and they actually played a lot better than expected last year. We expected that was going to be an issue, but they got it together, and they were a very good team. Seahawks, I think the coaching staff there will help. We'll see what that defense looks like, but McDonald did a great job with Baltimore's defense, number 1 scoring defense last year, has a lot of good young talent. The reason we were very high on them last year is because all the young talent they had, and that's still the case. So I do like both of those two teams. They're a lot more than any team in the AFC West. I think either of those are worth a value play. I'll likely back Seattle again at +900 just to see if the coaching matters there, the coaching change matters there. But I wouldn't be mad at the Rams at +450 either, or +370.
I like it. All right. Anything for you there, Alex?
No, I tend to agree with RJ regarding the value being, either the Rams or the Seahawks.
All right, let's get to free agency favorite. Free agency future, post-free agency future, I suppose. This post-free agency future segment is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Alex, you mentioned it just now, but give me your favorite post-free agency team prop bet.
Yeah, at this stage of the betting season, Brinson, considering we still have the draft to come and a lot can happen between now and then, I'm avoiding player props. Obviously, not a lot of options as far as most player props are concerned. But yeah, as far as team props are concerned, I just love what this Minnesota Vikings team has done in the offseason, both offensively and defensively, particularly on the defensive side of the football. I think this team is going to be competitive in what appears to be a pretty tough division suddenly. So give me the Vikings to potentially win their division at +750.
What about you, RJ?
I'm scrolling really quick because I want to ask something. Okay, so I can find some odds for Vikings to make the playoffs, +260. And, so that one's a little bit easier, not have to win the division. So what do you think about that one? +260, yes.
I'm all over that as well. Yeah, I love that.
What was that again?
So I was looking to make and miss the playoffs odds at a book, and I found Vikings to make the playoffs is +260, to miss is -330. So with the concern about how strong the division is, I think that's a pretty good one where they can at least sneak in with a wild card at +260. And wanted to see Alex's thoughts there.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. Again, I just think this defense is going to be a legit top 10 defense in the NFL. Love what I saw down the stretch from them. And then offensively, I still feel that one of the more talented offenses in the NFL, especially if you look across at the skill position player, especially if Justin Jefferson, which I see no reason he wouldn't, returns at 100%. I think if they can get adequate quarterback play, they will be very competitive and potentially win double-digit football games. And
Brian Flores makes a big difference there too. But talk about if they could get adequate quarterback play, they'll do this. That's what we said about the Falcons last year too, and that did not happen. So
you're right.
That's a big X factor there.
I have more confidence in the brain trust though with O'Connell.
I think Kevin O'Connell's a really underrated head coach in the
Agreed.
NFL.
I have a lot more
he might be a top 10 coach in the NFL, and we just haven't seen it on full display yet because we're too busy focusing on the injury with Cousins and all the different quarterbacks. But I mean, he had them they didn't make it, but they were right there with it's basically the same thing that Kevin Stefanski
started
did.
Games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and much different situation too. Everybody expected a lot of the Falcons last year in the odds market, and Vikings are completely being written off to Alex's point of being a good value here. My best value is the Eagles to win the NFC East at plus 135. I think Dallas is a key candidate to take a step back. Philly has much of the talent still that nearly won a Super Bowl, even with a few key guys retiring. Still have Jalen Hurts at quarterback, obviously A.J. Brown upgraded at running back. The weapons are there, and the coordinators are a lot better. And I think, I always harp on this podcast about coaching is very underrated in the market a lot of the time. And guys like Brian Daboll can make a difference. And so when you bring in two upgrades at offensive and defensive coordinator here, I think it can make a huge difference for this team. The defense clearly was an issue at the end of last year. So I like Philly to come in and win this division at plus 135. I think that's a pretty good value.
All right. I'm going to get a little crazy with the cheese whiz, as the kids do not say. And thanks to all the different things that you could do on FanDuel Sportsbook, I am going to parlay the Kansas City Chiefs to win the AFC West along with the San Francisco 49ers to win the NFC West. And that gets me to minus 102. So the two biggest favorites, the two teams that were in the Super Bowl, the two best rosters in football, or at least the best roster in football and the best quarterback in football, simply have to win their division. And I understand that the Seahawks could be frisky with the new coach. And the Rams, I think the Rams could win the division too. Like, I don't think that's off the table. The Aaron Donald thing, I think, is just huge. And I think, you're getting some decent value where, it might be Thanksgiving and we'll be like, oh, this was obvious. We could have just parlayed these two and it was a lock to get in. So I'm going to parlay those two. If you wanted to get real interesting, you could also add the Ravens at plus 110. The Eagles at plus 135, and the Buccaneers, we'll throw the Lions in there too. The Lions and the Bucks, 89-1, 6-leg parlay. I'm not going to include the NFC South or the AFC South or the AFC East because I think those are kind of a little dicey a little bit. So 6-leg parlay, 89-1. That's my second best bet. This post free agency favorite prop bet. Our favorite bet, future bet, I suppose. This segment has been brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I might do an 8-leg parlay this year. Or is it 8-leg parlay this year where I pick all the division winners and see if that hits. That can be fun.
What could go wrong?
I think like 7 of them. If I hit 7.
Yeah, the play obviously is to play them all straight. And if you want to put like a tiny little bit on the parlay, then yeah.
Yeah, clearly.
Play them straight. Really, try to hit.
I'd like to look and see like how many times in my life I've ever how many times in my career I've ever actually gotten like 6 of the 8 divisions right. I mean, it's probably pretty minuscule. Like, it's hard to do. Harry demands an 8-leg division winner parlay from Brinson. You shall ask and you shall receive. All right, that'll do it for our best bet show. I gotta say, for a show that's happening in the middle of March Madness in March about the NFL, I was wildly entertained as always with you fellas today. Thanks for hopping on. Thanks for doing this as always, especially in the off season. For Prop, for RJ, I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you guys later.